Hello. In today's video, we will be going over how to fundraise for your FTC team. This includes cold emails, cold calls, and purchasing equipment. You'll want financial independence to purchase additional parts, materials, machinery, and 3D printing materials. There's many other fees, including registration, so being able to have some financial independence is going to allow your team to be able to experiment and be able to make your own decisions. So we highly encourage all teams to be fundraising to be able to have these opportunities and flexibility. There are three types of fundraisers: corporate sponsorships, individual donations, and events. Corporate sponsorships, which we'll be talking the most about, is any company that's going to give your team money. There's also grants, which are essentially the same thing, except each company will have an application to receive that grant. So you're applying for this money instead of reaching out to companies asking for it. You can also set up individual donations. This includes any friends and family who are interested in supporting you and your team. They can pitch in a tiny bit to help support you. And all of that can add up to be a reasonable amount. Then the final type of fundraiser is events. Some examples include small bake sales or lemonade stands, or any small events where you do something in exchange for money. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be focusing on corporate sponsorships and grants because these are typically the most successful and the best way to fundraise the most money. So first, how do we find sponsors? The first and most important thing that you should do is reach out to the people that you know, your parents know, your coaches know, or whoever else knows. Because when you have a connection to a certain person or a certain company, you're going to have a much higher rate of success when you're trying to reach out to them, get a response, and get money for your team. So anyone you know will help. Second, if you don't have an existing connection to a person or company, look for any company out there. But finding commonalities with specific companies can really help. So for example, STEM companies, robotics companies, local companies, or companies that support youth and education are great places to start. At the same time, you don't want to limit yourself, so reach out to whoever you can. Finding and establishing those connections can help, so just keep that in mind. Next, let's talk about cold emailing. So cold emailing is a process of sending emails to companies that you don't currently have contacts with. So you don't know this company, you just found their email somewhere and you're reaching out for the first time. They know nothing about you. There's a couple of steps to writing cold emails, and every team is going to have their own process. This is just the general outline for how you want to set up your cold emails. So first you need to write the template. The template is what you're going to send to every single company. You might change a couple of words here and there, like if you're addressing it to Amazon and then you address it to your local library. So you're going to change a couple of words, but for the most part, your template is going to stay the same for all of the companies you're reaching out to. Next, you're going to collect emails from various companies or any contacts in general. This could look like reaching out to people you already know and getting their emails, or it could just be going on Google, searching for different companies, and pulling their emails out of their websites, however that would work for you. And then make a list of all of those companies and their emails. The third step is sending those emails to those companies. Sometimes you may also need to call companies, which we'll talk about briefly later. Then the last thing you want to do is make sure you're tracking which companies you've already sent emails to. So that way you're not sending emails to them twice. It'll keep it more organized for your team and you're able to reach more people. So for the template outline for your cold email, we're not going to provide you guys a specific example or anything. Rather, we want to provide you with the basic questions you should be answering in this email so that you're covering everything companies might look for. Next, you're going to collect emails from various companies or any contacts in general. This could look like reaching out to people you already know and getting their emails, or it could just be going on Google, searching for different companies and pulling their emails out of their websites, however that would work for you. And then make a list of all of those companies and their emails. The third step is sending those emails to those companies. Sometimes you may also need to call companies, which we'll talk about briefly later. Then the last thing you want to do is make sure you're tracking which companies you've already sent emails to, so that way you're not sending emails to them twice. It'll keep it more organized for your team and you're able to reach more people. So for the template outline for your cold email, we're not going to provide you guys a specific example or anything. Rather, we want to provide you with the basic questions you should be answering in this email so that you're covering everything companies might look for. So the first thing is, who are you? What is the program you're in? What's unique about your team? How many people are there? Are you guys high schoolers, college students? They need to know this basic information so they can get an idea of who you are. They're not going to fundraise for random students. They want to know what you're participating in and establish that connection with you guys. Why should the company sponsor? What are you guys going to gain or benefit? How is this going to change your team? How the company will benefit is also important. Sometimes teams will say, we can put your logo onto our team shirts or we can advertise you in some way on our robot. And by doing that, you give the company a bit of publicity and marketing to say thank you in exchange for the sponsorship they're providing. Another important question is, how will that money be spent? They want to make sure that you're going to spend it on robot parts or materials that are actually crucial and fundamental to what your team is doing. They don't want you to randomly spend it on toys or random items that aren't going to benefit your team, because then their money is not going to their desired purpose. So make sure you're able to say exactly what items or materials you want to purchase, such as we want to spend this on robot parts such as blank, or we want to spend this on a 3D printer. The final question you should be asking is, what are the next steps? You always want to have a call to action at the end. So whether that's scheduling a quick call in the next week saying, so to discuss this further, or can you please let us know if you have any questions, or if you're interested in sponsoring our team, could you please send a check to this address? Then they have information for where to send that check. So you need some kind of call to action at the end so that this email is actually going somewhere. It's prompting a conversation and the company can do something with that. This is the exact outline that we suggest that you guys follow. You're more than welcome to include more information than this, but we highly encourage you to keep it as succinct as possible because a lot of these companies are going to get similar requests and have a full inbox of emails. So the quicker you can catch their attention and get all of this content out, the better for your team. Next is collecting emails. Again, you want to look at your existing contacts, ask for their email, and then send your cold email out. Even if your contact at that company isn't the finance person or the person who's really going to decide whether they're actually going to sponsor your team, they can forward it to whoever in the company does handle these sponsorship requests. And that's going to give you a much higher chance of success for a response. Because it's coming from someone internal to their company, they're much more likely to respond to someone who's already an employee there that they do know, rather than some student or team that they haven't heard from yet. And then again, for cold emails, use Google, look at companies' websites, and try to find a method of contacting them through there. All right, next is cold calling. So cold calling is essentially a cold email, but instead of sending them an email, you're going to call their phone number and try to give your pitch there. So rather than writing out a huge script like your email, you want to prepare roughly a 30-second elevator pitch for your team that's condensing the most important content of your cold email. A lot of the time, the person you're speaking to isn't necessarily going to be the right person for your request. They might be a customer service person or someone who deals with the technology that they're selling and are trying to give you repairs or suggestions. So at the end of your 30-second elevator pitch, you want to ask if they would like more details or if there's someone else that you could speak to further to share these details. So that way you're getting into the company and you're able to continue with your call. The benefit of cold calling is you might have a higher success rate since it's much more difficult to say no to students and people in general when you're on the phone. For emails, you can play it off and decide later, say no, and there's less connection. But when you're physically on call with someone, they're more likely to say yes and want to help you out. They're also logistically more difficult, and that's because sometimes your school and the work hours will conflict for that company. So not all students are going to feel comfortable doing this, which is completely okay. We're giving you this option so you're aware of it. And if you'd like to try it, feel free. But cold emailing is the standard for what most teams do in the first tech challenge. All right, next let's talk about follow-up meetings. Many times when you reach out to a company and they do get back to you, they'll be interested in asking you for a meeting to discuss this further. So our best tip here is to be prepared for these meetings. Essentially, what you'll be talking about is everything in your cold email, but a bit more detailed. Most of the time, they'll also want to be able to get to know the team better. So it's great to show that you're excited and enthusiastic about FTC and about robotics. Showing that passion is going to make companies more willing to sponsor you. They're nothing too scary, especially when companies have said they're interested in sponsoring, but just want to learn a bit more about you. They're going to be supportive of your team and happy to get to know you. All right, last major tip for sending cold emails and doing all these sponsorship and grant applications is get your full team involved. Regardless of if someone is more focused on hardware or software or outreach, you really want to make sure the entire team is involved in trying to get sponsorships and money. Because the majority of the time, your hardware members are limited by if they have the right parts, so they're going to need the money. Your software members may be limited by other factors. So getting your whole team involved now will be super important to set the rest of your team up for success later. So what this could look like is setting a goal for each member to send X amount of emails or X amount of calls for people per week. Whether this is 5 emails, 10 calls, whatever it is, figure it out with your team and figure out what works best for you. Everyone should be sending the same templated email. So once that template is completed and written, you all just want to send the same one. Don't write multiple emails that are different to people. Just perfect one and run with it. Next, we highly suggest that you create some kind of spreadsheet to track the emails that you're sending out, which is relatively straightforward. Just have a column for what the company name is, what the email is for that company, if you sent the email already or if it's yet to be sent. That way, it's easy for the whole team to see which companies have we reached out to, which ones have we not, which ones can I reach out to, etc. Lastly, you want to designate 1 to 2 people to watch the team email and be able to respond to companies promptly. Usually, multiple people will have access to the team email, but you want to make sure there's a couple of people who are responsible for this. This way, when you do get responses, you're able to answer promptly instead of causing miscommunications between members or going too long without any responses or follow-ups with companies. That's it for fundraising and sponsorships. Thank you for watching.